right. Back to truth time at the TruthWire, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for our second show of the day. I am your host, Greg. It's the TruthWire time. Guys, we have something special for you, something interesting. I've been wanting to do this for quite some time. We know there's been a lot of divisions within the left itself. What actually classifies somebody to be a left? There's different meanings. On the contrary, I stood differently than a lot of the people in the Democratic Party and the Democratic movement, the leftist movement in the United States, when it came to COVID. I actually spoke at Defeat the Mandates, where it happened to be a lot of conservatives, populist right people, a lot of doctors that leaned to the right when it came to their ideology and their politics. And now we seem to have a big division today with some of those folks because on the Israel situation or the Gaza situation, they tended to go along with RFK. Not all of them, but they were hardcore Zionists. So I've been wanting to have these conversations. I wanted to call them COVID conversations from the left or conflicting COVID conversations, but I wanted to have conversations about the divide and the differences when it came to COVID so we can talk about them, because cancel culture was a real thing. I think that, you go back to COINTELPRO, which is an FBI tactic, a program which was intended to divide and keep people on both sides of the political aisle at each other's throats to make sure there was no real opposition in the United States. And I believe COVID was one of those situations where there was a divide. So I brought together a team today. Fiorella will not be participating in this one. She'll do the next one. Joining me today, I'm going to introduce each one of our guests to have these important conversations about COVID. We put together a great panel. So let me introduce, first of all, on my side today, a guy who's going to be kind of has the same view. You guys know Matt Weinglass. We've done a lot of shows together from the homeless left, and he will be part of the anti-COVID narrative, vaccines, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if we want to call it pro, negative. We're not monoliths here, but let's bring in Matt Weinglass from the homeless left. Matt, how are you doing today?
Great, Pasta. I'm so glad you put this thing together. I'm really excited to have this discussion. It's long overdue. We should have been having this. Well, we've been talking about it, but this is a good form to do it. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because when you went out to those protests, when you were at UCLA, the pro-Gaza protest, a lot of people were wearing masks. They had to show your vaccine card. It's kind of weird because we've been in the streets with different people at different times, different groups, whether it be conservatives or liberals or whatever you want to call them nowadays. It's hard to classify anybody, but we shared a similar stance where we were against a lot of the protocols. We were against the vaccine itself. And I think it's great that we're going to have these conversations. So thank you for joining me today, Matt. Let's introduce our adversaries or friends or the opposing panel today. Guys, you know him. You should know him. He's not only a colleague of mine, but I consider him a good friend. I lived with him for quite some time. I wouldn't have had a show if it wasn't for this guy. Ladies and gentlemen, Ron Placone is with us today.
Pasta, what's up? I forgot to mention this when you did my show, which, by the way, our interview is dropping tomorrow, and I think that kind of spawned this coming up. But you did call me out for not salting my food enough, a critique that was fair and justified, and I have since evolved. So I look forward to cooking for you again sometime in the future, despite our differences on some of the issues.
Yes. Well, I mean, the biggest issue is the fact that you keep denying the fact that you made fun of me in my two-piece Sopranos Puma jogging outfit. You can still deny it, but
folks, the episode drops tomorrow. You decide which narrative is the accurate one. I did not deny anything. I'm just focused more on the timeline of said jogging suit and the lines that followed. But let's let the people decide on that one. The episode drops tomorrow.
Well, it wasn't their self-esteem that was smashed. It was mine, but they can make their own decisions. We'll see what they have to say. Joining Ron and kind of teaming up with Ron or on Ron's side today, shared similar thoughts and opinions. You might have seen her on the Punch Up podcast with Pat Cote, a.k.a. Pat the Burner. Lila Charles Lee is with us today. How you doing, Lila?
I am good. Thank you. It's really early over here on the West Coast. I just set my alarm.
Well, let the day drinking begin. So
right?
Right. Let's go, guys. What we're going to do out there for the audience to understand is we're going to go back and forth. Obviously, we have different conflicting opinions about what happened during the COVID. we don't want to get too deep into the post-COVID, long COVID, that kind of thing. Since this is the first discussion, the one topic we will be talking about is the origins of COVID and whether that matters or not. But then after we get through that, we're going to have opening statements. We're going to go back and forth, one from the pro side, one from the anti side. Once that is done, and once we are done talking about the origins of COVID, each one of the participants is going to be able to ask the opposing side a question. And then we will definitely get into talking about that and open forum about that. I don't have a clock set because I think this is going to be a conversation. We're going to respect each other. We're going to understand each other. We're going to try to keep our comments between 2 and 3 minutes. If it goes a little bit longer, if it goes a little shorter, that's okay. I'm not going to break out a clock unless it's needed to. But the goal in mind today is not to win this debate, right? It's to build bridges of understanding and thought, to open up the door to have more conversations. Because I do believe if the ruling class keeps us separated on all sides of the political spectrum, if they have us fighting each other, it's divide and conquer, they win. So that's why I was very anxious to have these conversations today. And we are going to get the ball rolling. This is going to be the first one. Hopefully, Ron and Lila can have some of their friends join in on another episode. Fiorella, Edwin DeJesus, friends of mine, they want to be part of this. So maybe we can make a thing of this and we can kind of build on each episode moving forward. So this is kind of like a little experiment today. I want to thank everybody joining in on this experiment, and I'm going to get the ball rolling. The visiting team, Lila and Ron, chose to receive, which means I will start the opening comments and we will get the ball rolling. You guys ready?
Let's do it.
Yep.
All right. Whistle sounds. We begin. This is my opening statement for the debate on the anti-COVID vaccine and protocol sides, right? Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed judges and my fellow debaters, today we stand at a critical crossroads in public health and personal freedom. The COVID-19 pandemic has not only tested our resilience, but has also brought to light significant concerns surrounding the vaccines and protocols implemented in response. While vaccines have been touted as the primary solution, it is essential to acknowledge the deep-seated issues that have emerged. One of the most significant flaws during the crisis has been the rise of cancel culture. Many individuals who voice legitimate concerns about vaccine safety, efficacy, and the rapid development process faced ostracization, and censorship. This culture of fear stifled open dialogue and honest debate, pushing dissenting voices into the shadow rather than fostering understanding. Moreover, we can't ignore the tainted history and growing mistrust of big pharmaceutical companies. Numerous scandals, such as the opioid crisis, the manipulation of drug pricing, and the use of Africans and South Americans as lab rats have left many Americans wary of the motives and integrity of these corporations. This skepticism has compounded the perception that profit motives may outweigh public health considerations. Additionally, the implementation of unwarranted mandates has exacerbated tensions. Many individuals feel that their personal freedoms are being infringed upon by government and employer mandates, forcing them to choose between their jobs and health decisions. Such mandates not only raise ethical questions, but also contribute to a sense of division and reassessment among the public. Furthermore, skepticism towards vaccines and protocols stems from valid concerns, such as, number one, the rapid development, the unprecedented speed at which the COVID-19 vaccines were developed left many questioning long-term safety and effectiveness. Also, the fact that they had qualified immunity, meaning you could not sue them and they had protection from the government. Natural immunity. Numerous studies suggest that natural immunity resulting from infection may offer substantial protection, yet this has often been overlooked in favor of the one-size-fits-all vaccine approach. Transparency and trust. The lack of transparency and data sharing, mainly when it came to the experiment of using these vaccines and the communication of potential side effects, has eroded trust among the public. Just look at the trials from the Pfizer information that's coming out right now. In addressing these issues, we must also emphasize the importance of building bridges rather than walls. Engaging in constructive conversations like this one, rather than resorting to cancellation, will allow us to address the fears, dispel myths, and foster a more informed populace. Let us strive for a society where open discourse is encouraged, where concerns about health and safety are met with understanding, and where we can come together to navigate these complex issues collaboratively. Thank you guys for participating and joining in. Ron, Lila, you may make your opening comments right now. One of you, please go right ahead.
All righty. I will go ahead and start. And first of all, I will reiterate, just out the gate here. Thank you guys for having this conversation. I think these types of conversations are long overdue, and I hope that we can, find some common ground, even though we're likely not going to agree on every single thing in one chat. The crux of a conversation like this and a debate like this is around the COVID-19 virus, around the idea of COVID caution and the United States response to it over the past going on 6 years now. I contend that the United States as a society, culturally and politically, has failed absolutely miserably when it's come to this pandemic. I contend that COVID-19 is a dangerous virus. The long-term effects are completely unknown, and it's something that should be taken seriously. Throughout the course of the past 6 years, we were sold this false dichotomy that our only two options are vax and relax and just listen to King Fauci, or fuck all. And those are the only two choices. Those are absurd extremes. Neither one of them are based in reality. As a society, we chose fuck all. All COVID caution was then thrown to the wind, and a lot of particulars were completely ignored. The idea of top-bottom air purification, something that I advocated for since day one, was ignored, was never heard. The idea for top-bottom testing, which I advocated for since day one, was ignored, was not heard at all. And as a result, we have seen a rise in eugenics because of the overcorrection towards public health. Measles is at a 30-year high. COVID is still running rampant. Our goal was to get it to about 10,000 cases a week. We're pushing 500,000 each and every week. It is disabling children. It is causing long-term effects. And we keep getting further and further away to the point where now, as a society, we are questioning germ theory. I personally believe we're about a year away from people being shamed for washing their hands and doing so being seen as a political act. This is a very, very frightening time culturally, medically, scientifically, and politically. There has been a failure of leadership on behalf of both parties, on behalf of the corporate capture of government. And I contend that the enemy in this situation is not science, is not medicine, but it is capitalism. It is the ruling class who overpromised on the dangers of COVID, who overpromised on what the vaccine would do. And their intention was to get you back to work. It was never about science and medicine. It was about their agenda to keep you at work. And that's what's really focused around the COVID caution conversation.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. Great way to open it on up. Very interesting. Matt, your turn.
So I'll go back to 2020. What I noticed, experiencing this like everyone else, I was just like everybody, ready to take this thing very seriously. I saw the China videos, people seizuring up, twitching, going into these shocks and then death, all happening pretty quickly. We saw a bunch of those videos. We were told in Italy there were dead bodies lined up in the street. My personal, place to start is to ask questions. What's going on? I had an opportunity to talk directly with a colleague in Italy. He was a sales agent of mine. I said, "Hey, is everything okay?" He said, "What do you mean?" This is in February 2020. And I said, "The dead bodies in the streets." He said, "Oh, that's actually not happening." That got a red flag right in the air for me. And I was, again, ready like everyone else. It got to LA. We were trying to follow these rules. But what I noticed is everybody getting on the fear campaign. The fear campaign was about 2 weeks to flatten the curve, stay home, don't go outside. There's going to be dead bodies in the streets. Of course, that didn't happen. And so right away, I was looking into it. What is really going on here? And when I saw my fellow friends, family, colleagues here, particularly in Southern California, not want to have conversations, not want to look for preventative treatments, early treatment protocols, things that we were seeing getting silenced and censored. The stage was being set for exactly what I think a lot of people that don't look into it think, that there's going to be these two camps of all in or nothing. And it wasn't all in or nothing. There were other more nuanced ways to go about it. But those people doctors, particularly like Dr. Pierre Corey, a bunch of other ones, were getting deplatformed. We're getting canceled. We're not allowed to talk about preventative care, early treatment protocol, things that would prevent you from getting the thing in the first place. No, so that didn't happen. And so when you look at all that and you see people not wanting to ask questions, doing all in on censorship, that went against all of the, I thought the identity of a lefty was to ask questions, was to engage, was to care about other people's stories. And that's why we get these stories lost. And it set up an unfortunate precedent of how we went into when the vax was released and people lining up to get it, not asking questions about it. We're going to be talking about origins, but in this case, if we're already wired to be in two camps, then you're going to be all in on the thing that your camp tells you. And that makes science not science. It makes it a religion. And we said, trust the science. That was trust Fauci, King Fauci. It became this church of science. And that's not how science goes. Science is about asking questions. And, oh, shoot, it looks like I got a little frozen there.
It's the massage.
Okay, I'll come in and out. I'm done with my open.
It's Fauci did it to you.
Yeah, I guess he did, huh?
Yeah. Is that good with your open?
Yeah, I'm good.
Let's get to Lila. Lila, jump on in. Give us your
Fauci
take.
is science, I'm joking. Okay, so I am a leftist. I'm a socialist. I believe in democratic ownership of the means of production, in working class solidarity, public health, dignified lives for everyone. And the outbreak of COVID, for me, revealed once again how interconnected all of our fights are: labor, disability, healthcare, economy, racial justice. And it was the capitalist class, the right wing, who worked to orchestrate the end of the pandemic, the social end of it, in order to get us all back to work, back to school. McKinsey consultants, Mayor Pete's former employer advised governments that they should just simply announce the end of the pandemic, take credit for ending it, and create a path to the next normal. Opinion pieces in corporate media claimed that kids weren't affected, that lockdowns were bad for mental health, in spite of the suicide rates of teenagers actually decreasing during those lockdowns, and that masks were the scarlet letter. Ashish Jha, Rochelle Walensky, Leanna Wen, they mocked masks. They told us there was an urgency to return to normal, but they sent their kids to private schools with HEPA air filters, good ventilation, and they likely didn't have 40 plus kids crammed into small stuffy rooms, as most of the working class communities and communities of color were forced to suffer through. And what was interesting to me was that poll after poll showed that Black and Hispanic people supported remote learning, work from home, and mask wearing. They understood the consequences of getting sick. They were also the demographics least likely to get the vaccines, both because they were skeptical because of historical horrors that had been carried out on their communities, but also because they didn't have access to healthcare. They didn't have primary care physicians. There wasn't a lot of trust in the medical community. Understandably, they'd been completely left out of our health insurance scam industry. And that, to me, really was revealing that there were a lot of people who enjoyed, and they were mostly white, wealthy liberals, shitting all over people who didn't get vaccinated, which I found abhorrent, especially because, as I just said, the biggest cohort of people who didn't want to get the vaccine were communities of color, but who still took COVID seriously and wanted to protect themselves and their communities. Children, we were told, were not affected by the acute phase of COVID. However, they were still carriers, and they were points of super spreader events in their communities, in their families, and for their teachers and staff at school. And I think, coming back to the fact that I am a leftist, you can't fight a global pandemic on an individual basis. It's called public health for a reason. However, as long as there is this financial incentive in medicine and the politicization where, before Biden came into office, we had Kamala and Biden and many Democrats saying that they wouldn't trust the vaccine. Then as soon as Biden came in, warp speed vaccine, they castigated anybody who didn't want to get the vaccine. So in theory, if there were no financial incentive, I would support vaccine mandates. But I think for too long, we've all seen that while science is repeatable and you should follow the science, it might change, but it's not etched in stone. Because we had so much politicization of vaccines, of COVID, of masking, it's hard to trust anything that's put out, not by peer-reviewed scientists and scientific studies, but by the people who are in our administrations, whether it's the Trump regime or the Biden regime. But the truth is that the science on COVID has not changed. We've known from the beginning it's airborne, that it affects every organ, that it's a vascular disease. And we have now seen that COVID is the #1 chronic illness in children. Their cancer rates, their rates of diabetes, the fungal infections, tuberculosis are all making comebacks, which is why many people, even at the onset, recognize that the dysregulation of our T cells and our immune system liken this to airborne AIDS. Mm-hmm. So I understand not wanting to get the vaccine, but I don't understand not wanting to protect our communities. Because to me, that is what it means to be a leftist, is that we take care of each other.
It's interesting looking at the chat, some pro and cons over there, and it's so far we're getting some great discussion. So let's bleed into our second point. You guys are going to go first, right? Since we went first on the opening, so you guys make a decision. You can make it right here, talk back and forth. But I want to ask the question, and this is going to the panel. Do the origins of COVID, first of all, what do you believe they are, and are they significant in this discussion to what's going on? So starting from the very beginning, you guys, what do you feel the origin of COVID is, and does that matter in what we should have done public health wise moving forward?
Do you want to go first, Lila, or
sure.
do you want me to?
I believe, and I'm not a scientist, so this is just from reading, from doing my own research, that it was a lab leak. It's a biohazard level 3 virus that I absolutely believe, and I think it was, capitalized on by disaster, the capitalist class, the mass surveillance and all that. But I do believe, I believe that COVID it was a global pandemic that's killed upwards of 25 million people. So whether it is a lab leak or it happened, zoonotic, or from a bat or from the markets, I still think I still take it seriously.
Yeah. Matt, do you want to jump in there? And Lila, if you want to make it clear, when you say lab leak, that it accidentally got out or it was purposely?
Oh, I see what you're asking.
Yeah, I understand what you
yeah.
You believe, do you believe it was purposely let out or it accidentally got out and hey, we have to fucking take care of it?
I guess I believe it was an accident until I started reading the kill switch about Jeffrey Epstein recently. I was like, oh, that's interesting. No, but I mean, I can go down those rabbit holes. I do believe that it was a mistake.
Yeah. Matt?
Oh, you want me to follow up on another question or respond to the?
No, this is the COVID origins before we get to open questions. So, do you believe it came from bat soup in a Wuhan market, or do you believe it was a lab leak or purposely let out? Do you believe it was created in a lab? And how does that have significance on what transpired after?
Well, looking at all the data and paper trail, and if you look at the timestamps, it clear not only was it a lab leak, it was absolutely done on purpose. COVID actually came from the University of North Carolina by a leading researcher that was studying the beta coronaviruses, working with the U.S. government, NATO, all this stuff. You could see all of the paper trail on this. Jeffrey Sachs looked into this, and then it was transferred over to Wuhan to be then distributed out there. But you can see the timeline, and I'm glad that Lila, you mentioned the Epstein files, because you can see the timestamps going way back to 2015 when we talk about the let's put together a pandemic preparation panel. Bill Gates emailing with Epstein, and they came up with an idea. of putting mRNA into a vaccine that they were able to get what do you call it? They had all of the documentation put together. He actually put Bill and Melinda Gates money, about $50 million invested in that vaccine, which got the patent and was able to get this thing going well before that. And if you guys know about Event 201, that's also something to look at. So when you look at that you've been planning for this thing, it's not an oopsie, we accidentally leaked something. It actually goes into the pharma, the profit over people model. Pharma doesn't capitalize when a random event happens. Pharma creates the event. You create the solution to the event, then the event comes out, and then you make the money off of it. And you see this time and time again. And we see this not just with COVID, with every other outbreak or disease we look at. We go, oh, there's the profit model right there. They do it over and over. This just happened to be a massively big one and a successful one because they were able to get it on a global level.
Ron?
Yeah, I got to be honest, and I'm not trying to be rude here, but I don't know what planet you all are living on. We all know that COVID-19 originated when Stan Marsh's dad fucked a penguin. That's well documented. Don't you watch South Park? No.
Yeah.
So the largest study done on this topic was done by Dr. Angela Ramusin. I'm probably mispronouncing it. That study, which was the biggest study done on this issue, was inconclusive. I think that to really be solely responsible here, we need to take the position of, yeah, we don't know for sure. There is some evidence pointing to a natural origin, some zoology traces that they did that got it back to like a specific breed. However, there's also a lot of concerning information out there that does point to a lab link, as Lila brought up, and Matt, you did too. My personal belief is that, sadly, we're never going to know for sure. I hope I'm wrong, but what I do contend is that, kind of like what Lila was saying, the second part of your question, does it matter? Yes, I think it does matter because it's important for us to know as we fight future pandemics. But in the big scheme of things, it doesn't take away from COVID being a dangerous virus that has killed millions and is something that should be taken seriously.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say it's not a lab leak. I'm going to say it's a bio weapon. I'm going to come out and say that. And the work that most convinced me was Dr. David Martin. Now, I'm not going to agree with everything that Dr. David Martin says, but when it came to this particular situation, when he had talked about the patents, and you can go back to the patent registry and you can look, there were patents bought by big time players, Bill Gates, other people, for quite some time that showed that they were buying up patents on coronaviruses, and they date back years and years before this outbreak. I do believe, I hate to get all Alex Jones on the situation, but I do believe that there are people who believe that this planet are overpopulated, the ruling class, whatnot, and they like to see some of us go. Also, if you look who was most vulnerable, and I think Lila talked about the fact that, people of color, Black people, Latin people, they were the most hesitant to get this vaccine. But white people who believe in their doctor, what the man in the white coat said, they lined up to do so. And those were the policyholders. Those are the people that Big Pharma had to pay for their insurance going on for quite some time. So if you can find a way to get rid of a lot of people, you can close down businesses, close small businesses, whatnot. If you can get people to, it's also an experiment, if you can get people to quarantine without putting a tank on the street, that gives a lot of information to the social engineers on how to control us moving forward. This was a case study of whatnot. So I don't believe that this was a lab leak. I don't believe this got out. I believe this was intentionally let out. And if you also look, and I don't want to quote too much of RFK's work, the real Anthony Fauci, he really just talked about how doctors were not allowed to be doctors, and some of the way things had took place in this whole situation, the timelines taking place. When you look at the Patriot Act all opened the door for us to do bioweapons testing again that once had been locked up. So I do believe 100% that this was a bioweapon let out. Now, the important thing that I want to emphasize, that if they understood what they were doing and they let this out, they probably also had a cure and understood how to control this. there were tests and there was information out that the CDC knew in 2016 that ivermectin was effective in stopping the transmission and lessening the viral load when it came to COVID-19. So I don't believe that this was necessarily a lab leak. I believe this is a bioweapon. I look at the Lockstop document, which was written by the Rothschilds I think it was the Rockefellers, which pretty much described the whole thing of COVID-19, the way it would take place. I think, Matt, you mentioned Agenda 2030 or
Event 201.
Event 201,
Which
or
Dr.
which
David
once
Martin
again,
talks about, yes.
yeah, Event 201 was another one. So I do believe that this was not a lab leak, but a bioweapon let out with an intention of shutting down, small businesses, and also too as well to stop us to converging with each other. The more the separation, if you can have that, there's a them and an us, and separate people from getting together, you've then, fulfilled your objective of breaking up society. So I do believe, and if anybody wants to have any last comments before we get to the open question part about this and put a bow on it, please do so, Lila.
Well, okay. So if you think it was a bioweapon released intentionally, what precautions are you taking to protect yourself from this engineered bioweapon?
What I did, I went along with the COVID protocols from the FLCCC. I took ivermectin, I took vitamin C, vitamin D, quercetin. When it was Omicron, I also did a rinse up above, and I pretty much stopped the COVID in its tracks and just had some time to recuperate. So that's, like I said, the CDC.
You still took precautions. You still took it. You didn't just think it was a common cold, right? You still responded to it as something serious to have to sort of navigate. I'm just trying to figure out.
I would say, to be fair, Lila, I looked at it as between a common cold and what, a very harmful, from what, Ron and you have described it as a very serious, I don't want to say disease or virus, whatever you want to classify it as, but somewhere in between. In other words, I do believe the comorbidities, and it did kill a lot of people who were overweight, people who had illnesses before. Those were most in harm, most in danger. But I didn't look at it as I necessarily had to take a vaccine that had qualified immunity on it too as well. So somewhere in between, Dr. Urso, who I spoke to, he said, people are not taking this serious enough. And once again, he was in the defeat the mandate side, whatnot. So I kind of looked at it somewhere in between. It was dangerous. It had to be treated. But the treatment I took with my 83-year-old mom at the time, and we took them together.
Can I piggyback on this one? The bioweapon that Craig's talking about, I'm going to go a little further and say the bioweapon is the vaccine. That's the bioweapon. COVID was intentionally put out there to get a virus out there that people would get very quickly and would affect people around the globe. But I will double down and say, even Bill Gates will tell you, after he sold his stock in mRNA technology, he sold it in 2022. He bought it in 2019. He put $50 million in 2019. 3 years later, he cashes out with $500 million. Okay, so that happened, and then all of a sudden he started telling you the truth about COVID. He said it acts as a flu. It only affects the elderly and people with comorbidities. That's it. And so if we understood that, which a lot of us did at the time, it's not COVID that's the bioweapon, it's the vaccine. That was the whole point. And that's what Dr. David Martin talks about, which is the point. We say they create the solution and then the problem. The solution is the thing they patent it. That's the thing you can see, as Craig mentions, the patent in 2001, 2002. It's all there well before pandemic preparation panel was put together in 2015 and Event 201 in 2019, and releasing this to everybody in 2020. So the precautions we take are across the board for all of our health needs, which includes all the supplements that Craig's talking about. It includes ivermectin. It includes exercise, health, engagement with people, just understanding how our bodies work and how all that stuff is good. And to be outside, not inside. Outside helps us in getting actual sunlight and playing sports and engaging with people.
By the way, guys, and I'll let you guys respond to this, but why don't I incorporate my first question into letting you guys respond to this, because it's tied together. With everything Matt and I just said and what we laid out over there, my question to you guys was going to be, well, you all have a distrust in Big Pharma. I know, Matt, Ron, you and I cried about it several times. We're supposed to be on stage together at the Medicare for All March, and I got thrown off the stage because of my beliefs. Not that I was upset about it, but I thought it set the table for what was to come of the cancer culture that was purposely implemented. But my question to you guys is, everything we just said about the origins and whatnot, with all that distrust in big pharma, and we all been out there, right? Medicare for all was one of our number one top seated issues when it came to the Bernie Sanders campaign. We were out there marching for it and whatnot. With all the distrust in big pharma, the lobbyists and whatnot, how could we ever trust them again and take a vaccine when they've killed so many people? And all they have ever showed us is that they're driven off profit motives, and they don't really care about public health. How could we ever trust them and take this vaccine? Please, guys, respond.
Oh, go ahead, Ron.
Do you want to go?
Well, I just wanted to say that every wealthy white person I knew took the vaccine, including the makers and the people who profited off of it. And I feel like I despise Bill Gates, but if the vaccine were the bioweapon to get rid of people, why wouldn't he release the patent for the global south, which he didn't, which caused, millions of excess deaths? And while I understand why people are hesitant to take the vaccine, and there were vaccine injuries, and I am not excusing any of that, I think the qualified immunity was definitely a telltale sign. I also do know that at Pfizer, in their board meetings, they were thrilled when Jill Biden told everybody to take off their masks, because they knew that the vaccine wasn't sterilizing, and they said that this would increase the profits for Paxlovid because more and more people would get infected. So I agree with you. The financial incentives are disgusting, but the very first vaccine with the first strain of COVID-19 were highly effective at reducing the acute the acute stage of COVID, and also lowering the viral load. What should have happened is that we should have put the jabs in as many arms as possible around the world and continued to mask, because now what we've all become is one large petri dish with a dwindling immune response, which is why we're seeing all these diseases spring back up. So I think I think calling it a common cold doesn't line up with the hundreds and hundreds of studies that have shown the long-lasting repercussions of COVID and how they can it breaks the brain-blood barrier. It is now been found to break the amniotic fluid in pregnant mothers. So I guess calling it a common cold feels like we are ignoring the science, but that's...
Ron, jump in there.
I just
so
wanted to clarify. It's not. I'm not saying common cold. You're making that case.
Okay, sorry.
I'm quoting Bill Gates, who said himself that it's signs of a flu, like a regular flu, and we had zero statistics of flu deaths in 2021. The only year we had zero deaths from the flu ever.
Those masks are highly effective.
Those masks might be working.
Let Ron jump in. It is his turn, and Matt, I'll let you respond after. Go ahead, Ron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The reasons we did have less of that was because people were masking and taking precautions. So to answer your question, Pasta, I am very, very skeptical of big pharma. However, when I say big pharma, I know what I'm talking about. Big pharma is not a medical degree. Big pharma is a business degree. Big pharma is not your EpiPen. Big pharma is the reason the EpiPen costs 10 times more than it should. So yeah, I mean, to expand on that, looking into these vaccines, there have been, and look, I acknowledge, like, these vaccines do not prevent transmission. Now, the science and medicine community never claimed otherwise. It was, talking heads that didn't do their due diligence. And it was Joe Biden and Jill Biden, as Lila pointed out, and also Donald Trump, because he was all proud of how fast it was when his name was on it. So it was all these politicians and talking heads that overpromised on the vaccine, again, because I think they wanted to get you back to work. As far as it being a bioweapon, I mean, there's been over 1 billion of these things distributed, Matt. So if you are right, I guess a lot of us are going to be dead in about a year. Unfortunately, tons of us won't be alive for you to have an I told you so moment. But I have a feeling that is not going to happen. What I think's going on with these vaccines, yeah, they are profiting off of it, and that's a problem. One of the ways they're profiting off of it, too, is the vaccine apartheid. If it was really some bioweapon, why did they withhold it from a bunch of people? Why did they bogart these recipes? Why do they engage in evergreening the way the pharmaceutical industry always does? That just doesn't add up. So yeah, there's all kinds of shady pharmaceutical corruption, but what I contend is that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Are these vaccines the only tool for COVID? Of course not. And we've illustrated that throughout this conversation. There are plenty of COVID cautious people that are not vaccine or bust, that are not vax and relax. In fact, I would go a step further and say most of us aren't. Most of us advocate for all kinds of other things that were literally siphoned out of the conversation real quick. Are these vaccines helpful? A lot of studies say yes. There have been over 1,700 peer-reviewed studies in the scientific community around the world pointing towards the safety of these vaccines. Does that mean injuries never happen? Of course not. I know people who are injured by the vaccine. I'm sure that everyone here does. And I'll go a step further on that note, and I'll say that, I agree with a lot of people when they say that these companies should be held liable. Absolutely, they frickin' should. I agree with that 110%. Where I draw the line, though, is, again, throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. And really quickly, Matt, I'll give you a second, but I just want to respond for 2 seconds and let you jump in. And I want to get to their question next to us, because I would also, argue the fact that the reason why this was bogarted, because if there's a global mandate right now, and you have all the countries, whether it be China, Russia, Brazil, they're all signing on for global passports, you know what I'm saying, as far as vaccines are concerned. So the reason why these companies would bogart the recipe and hold out is that they knew there was going to be a mandate on them globally. They want to make as much money as possible before they give up that recipe to give it on out, right? So that's a very important part to point out as well. But Matt, let me let you jump in because I've said my part, and then we'll get to their question next as we put a bow on this question.
Okay. Yeah. No, looking at the data, I would just say to respond to Ron that the idea that you commit, and we know this as we are critical on Israel and we understand how genocides work. The response is always, if they wanted to genocide Palestine, they would have done it. Well, they did do it. There's a rollout method to turn something into a parking lot. Now, what is the end goal here? It's not to turn us into a parking lot, but it is, like Craig says, there's a method in place to reduce population. But more than that, the method is there to keep people tied into the pharma machine. And the way you do that is you issue, it's not preventative, it's not early treatment, it's reactionary treatment, which Western medicine has always been, and that's part of the big pharma game. So we understand that method is you have a treatment for something that then causes more problems. And I'll just end with this so we can pass along. But my personal story is my father-in-law getting every possible major a repercussion from the vaccine, and was fortunate enough to have a doctor tell him, don't take any more, because he would have kept taking them. And he said, don't take any more because there might be a link here. He ended up with blood clots everywhere. We're talking about total brain bleeds, kidney failure, everything. The guy's still holding on because he had an entire team behind him, including my wife, who's an RN. It's the only reason he's alive right now. But you want to talk about one man spending $7 million to keep him alive. So do the math on that, and you can see, because people say, oh, if they kill us all, how do they make the money? This is a perfect example how one person who did what he was told, which is take those 3 shots, and was fortunate enough to not take the 4th, but that's $7 million and counting. That's the method in place. So you can see it if you just step back and not fall for they would have parking lotted all of us instantaneously if they wanted to kill us. They're killing us in more subtle ways, and we're seeing it every single day with the statistics of all the health problems just globally. It's absolutely insane how bad it is.
Lila, I'll give you Lila, why don't you respond to that really quickly? And then Ron, why don't you ask a question after Lila, because we are on time constraints. I didn't realize that this discussion was going to be this lively. We probably need 2 hours to discuss this, even with the first one. But Lila, respond to that. Ron, ask your question to us, so at least we get 2 questions in from opposing sides before we wrap the show. Go ahead, Lila.
So I did just want to say, and I'm so sorry to hear about your father, and that's horrible. But, science can't be based on anecdotal evidence. It has to be based on reproducible studies and peer-reviewed studies. And while there have been, I think, probably millions of people who have been vaccine injured, there have been many times that number who have been COVID infected, injured, right? So that is how science works. My own father-in-law had a horrific response to a flu vaccine after getting it, yearly for over a decade. These things happen and they are horrible, but also the adverse reaction to actual infection versus to the vaccine is much worse and much more prevalent. We are seeing young people dying of heart attack, stroke, of like heightened levels of diabetes, tuberculosis. That is from COVID. And we know that because many of the people who are suffering from, and I know we weren't supposed to talk about long COVID, but many of the people who are suffering from the repercussions of having COVID got COVID before there was a vaccine. So that is also sort of, you can make a dividing line between when a person contracted COVID and when the vaccines were actually available.
Ron, ask your question. And Matt, if you have anything to say to that, you can implement it when we go into the next part. But let's get Ron's question to us, and we can go from there.
Yeah. So to kind of piggyback on what Lila was saying, the scientific method, it is exhausting, testing, retesting, challenging hypothesis, arranging data, trying to find whether this is an effect or if this is causation or association, and doing it over and over and over again ad nauseum. Part of the reason I feel the way I do about this entire issue is because I actually studied the rhetoric of science in graduate school. So I kind of have a basic understanding of how these processes work. And I've seen it instituted throughout, the past 6 years and counting around the COVID-19 virus. So that being said, one question that I'll pose to you, I'll pose a specific question about ivermectin. Something that I was open to at the beginning. I was like, well, let's see if this thing is helpful. There have been studies around the world, including at the University of Oxford, who had, no agenda. It was peer reviewed. They did not find anything conclusive that ivermectin helps with COVID-19. Also, you mentioned Dr. Corey, who was their medical license and board certification was revoked by the American Board of Internal Medicine. So do you all think that all of those studies and their conclusions were all bogus despite being peer reviewed, or that they were all in on some kind of conspiracy or agenda, and that all of these medical boards just have it out for this small handful of doctors? I'm not trying to be condescending, but I'm honestly asking, like, how do you explain that?
Okay.
Can I go first on this one, Matt, or do you want to go first?
I would. Okay. If you go, yeah, go for it.
It's ivermectin. I think I deserve to go first because I was the first person to make a video on it real quick. And I'll be brief and I'll let Matt jump in there because I did my video 2 months before the Dark Horse had Pierre Corey on. That was with Brett Weinstein, Ultra Zionist, with Pierre Corey to talk about ivermectin. And I did a video on it 2 months before that. And one of the reasons why I think that ivermectin, which was known, there was a report that came out from CDC that they knew that ivermectin was good at treating coronaviruses. They understood that it would help. It had to be done early. It couldn't be done late. It had to be when we catch it in the beginning. And it also had to be part of a cocktail in the right amount. So there are a lot of, there's been a lot of positive results with ivermectin. There's Peru that did a lot of studies that issued out ivermectin. El Salvador, the government issued out little packages with ivermectin, vitamin C, vitamin D, whatnot. And China's done some studies to see that it has worked. I would say that a lot of these people who have been disbarred is because they didn't want to play ball. A politicized big pharma is what we have. I mean, to talk in Yoda terms going backwards, but big pharma is politicized, right? And if you don't want to play ball, if you want to go against what they have to say, they've shown that they'll pull your licenses. So I think it was definitely a political attack. We understood that ivermectin's work. I've used it personally. It was on the WHO's list as one of the best medicines out there. And here's the thing. If it is safer than aspirin, and this is what's said by the CDC, the WHO, if it is safer than aspirin, and they give it to pregnant women to use at times, whatnot, and it won a Nobel Prize at one point for the spread of diseases in Africa, mostly Lyme-style diseases or different type of parasitical diseases, whatnot, and it was used to treat that. And it was successful, and it's safer than aspirin. Why wouldn't you give it a shot? You know what I'm saying? The reason why they didn't want ivermectin out there being used is because it was off patent, and big pharma couldn't make the money off it that they could. Anybody could make this stuff at any time. They knew it was successful. And like I said, I used the cocktail with my mother, and we were very successful at using it. So I think that ivermectin was purposely shunned. Look at the way the CDC then eventually treated it. Oh, don't be a horse. It's horse medicine. They lied to us because that's what they do. They lie to us. Matt, please jump in and go ahead.
Can I respond to that?
After Matt's statement?
After Matt? Okay.
After Matt. So hold your thoughts and let Matt have his statements, and then you can respond.
Yeah, I want to answer directly. Yes, it was a conspiracy to take down Dr. Pierre Corey. Absolutely. He ran the FLCCC. He went in right into DC. He talked in April 2020. He said he showed his information. He thought he would be treated as a hero, as somebody at least that had some sort of method to help people. He was completely blacklisted. His company, the FLCCC nonprofit, went to these countries that Pasta mentioned. I know personally because I have family in El Salvador, in Mexico. We went to Mexico. We went to see what those early treatment protocols were about. Anybody that went, if you were in Mexico, El Salvador, I can say personally know this, got positive for COVID. They got an early treatment protocol directly from Dr. Pierre Corey's FLCCC care package, which included ivermectin, included vitamin D, zinc, quercetin, the whole works. And they all got better overnight. And guess what? They reopened in Mexico while we were locked down a second time in California. Not because people were being foolish and stupid. It's because we didn't understand that we could treat this thing with preventative measures and early treatment. And as far as those studies go, I'll say 100% those studies were rigged on purpose. I know you say reviewed, but I have to tell you the way they rig it. Ivermectin needs to be studied in the first 5 days. It has to be. They purposely took people, waited several days after that, then started the treatment and only did it for 1 day. And then they put in that, and some of them did 2, but none of those studies you mentioned, I looked at all of them. None of them did 5 days, and they never started when you were supposed to start on day effing 1. That was on purpose to prove it doesn't work. And the last thing I say is that tweet going out by the FDA that was coordinated. It was a lie. It was an attack on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, who said, I threw the kitchen sink at it and I got better. And they wanted to make him, CNN wanted to take his ass down, even with Sanjay Gupta, the big doctor of CNN, going on there, admitting to Joe Rogan and his 11 million people listening to his show, admitted that they sabotaged him on purpose, and they got to do what they got to do. Finally, last thing, to get the emergency use authorization, there's 4 things that need to happen. One of those 4 things, and I'm talking about the vaccine, the bioweapon vaccine. You can't distribute it unless one of these things has to be very clear, and that's no other treatment can treat this thing. That's why the takedown of ivermectin. That's why the takedown of Dr. Pierre Corey. Textbook conspiracy to take him down. I'm done.
Ron?
Yeah, so you mentioned, Pasta, that the CDC, first they said ivermectin's good, then they vilified it. So, I mean, I'm curious, like, what's the reason for their back and forth on this? And I'm assuming this is also the same CDC that said you can go to work with COVID, and if you open a window, you'll be fine. So, I have some skepticism from that organization. Matt, some of these studies were conducted by the people who founded ivermectin. They had no agenda to have some conspiracy. Nobody disputes that ivermectin can be a very useful drug in the treatment of parasites and whatever else it's used for. I think that thus far it's been given a fair shot, and there has not been all that encouraging of results. Pasta, you're saying it helped you. I have no reason to not believe you. Yeah. I know other people who tried it, who are suffering from long COVID, and who tried it when they initially got COVID, and they said it did nothing for them. I have no reason to disbelieve them until there is something conclusive from the science and medical community that has been tested and tested over and over again. Verdict's still out, and that's about it. I mean, you have to look at where the science is at and also how a virus mutates. A lot of these issues that y'all bring up could really just be explained by how a virus mutates. A virus mutates by chance. It does not have a brain. It cannot evade anything. A virus just has a susceptible host, and then it mutates by chance while it is in that susceptible host. So when these vaccines were first rolled out, they were somewhat effective at preventing transmission. They were never 100%, and they never claimed to be for anybody who read the sheet of paper that was handed to them when they got their shot. Then what happened was, well, there were still a lot of susceptible hosts out there because we just kind of opened up. So the virus started mutating really freaking fast. And this virus does mutate faster than most viruses. So now we're just in a situation where these shots are constantly trying to catch up to COVID itself, which is the same way that flu shots work. I mean, I'm sure that we all remember growing up and up to present, there would be all those years where they'd be like, oh, yeah, the flu shot's not very good this year. Well, what did that mean? Well, that just meant that the strain of the flu that was going on, these shots didn't catch it as well. So this is just how medicine works. This is how science works. And getting back to the bigger picture of COVID, a question that I will pose to all of you, all kinds of precautions. If we've named tons of precautions that have nothing to do with the vaccine, and just to be abundantly clear, my personal take, whether or not you get a vaccine that does not prevent transmission, that is 100% your individual choice. But we've just named a ton of other things, from air purification to masking to top-bottom testing to top-bottom air purification in facilities. Do you all see a problem in that being completely vilified? Furthermore, do you see a problem in the rise of eugenics in our society, which, by the way, is the complete opposite of any left-wing ideas? Eugenics is the complete opposite of any lefty ideas, and that's the reality we're living in right now.
I'm gonna let I want to get Lila's opinion, Matt. I know you're itching to say some stuff, guys. It is 3:32, and Ron, you just posed a big question. How much time do you actually have before you have to dip out of here?
All right, I guess let's get final statements in. Sorry if I went a bit long.
Well, I mean, how about we take 30 seconds? Because I have so much to say on that, but 30 seconds for Lila, 30 seconds for Matt, and to close the show, we'll probably get out of here in 5 minutes. What I want you to do is, if you can think right now off the top of your head, if you have something nice to say about the opposing side of what you believed in. So Lila, why don't you take 30 seconds to just really just put a bow on this subject, and then Matt, I'll let you finish it on up, and then we'll get to the closing statements.
Okay. I guess my overall statement would be COVID. We are still in the midst of COVID now. Over 100,000 people are dying every year. It is the #1 chronic illness for children. Their rates of, again, pancreatic cancer, diabetes, and fungal infections that are resistant to antibiotics are skyrocketing. We see young people having heart attacks and strokes. It's a vascular disease, and it doesn't shed. It's in every single organ. They know this from doing autopsies. We're only 6 years in. We don't know what it's going to be like when people get 3 infections a year, and we don't know. A lot of people think they've never had it, or they've had it once, because we don't do daily testing. And a lot of people, they say like 60%, up to 60%, 40 to 60% could be asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. So I do still take it seriously. I value my brain and my heart and my health. I have 2 children who I want to, be able to be around for a long time. I have, people who are immunocompromised in my life. And it is, to me, the idea that we are just supposed to get back to normal. It's practicing eugenics. And as Fauci said, the vulnerable will fall by the wayside. And capitalists don't care. We see that with, genocide and bombing and ICE facilities and all of it. They do not care about our health. They are a right-wing elite class. And they stand for against everything I stand for as a leftist, which is protecting our community. And that, at the beginning of COVID, there was a huge emphasis on, kids don't get it, but we need to protect the elderly. And even though they were wrong, kids do get it. The idea that we are supposed to protect each other, and we do not just lift ourselves up by our bootstraps and try to fight a global pandemic on an individual basis, to me, is the very, basis of being a leftist.
Matt, 30 seconds to comment on that. Let's just get on out of here because I know people have to jump on out of here. This show should be 2 hours, not just 1 hour. And maybe you guys would agree, Ron and Lila, to come back and do this with again because we have a lot to discuss here. So please, Matt.
Is this my closing or this is my response?
This is your response.
Okay.
But try to keep it under 30 seconds to a minute, and then we'll do the closing.
I'll just say this. I'm super sad that we're in a time now where we're in these camps of right-wing extreme eugenics, fear-mongering, and left-wing, I guess the whole vaccine, data being public and no more bodily autonomy. I don't know how we got in these two camps. It's really bizarre. And the fear amongst the RFK Jr.'s he's going to destroy our entire system. I got news for everyone. Anybody who's afraid of that, it's not happening. It's not happening at all. They're keeping us in these fear camps. None of this, we are business as usual. Everything is happening on schedule. And if you guys didn't notice this, Trump's first day in office, within 24 hours of his second term beginning, he had Larry Ellison come right into this office and say, guess what? You get awarded your contract. This is Oracle. This is the guy. This is Israeli spy tech psychopath saying you're going to do some pre-crime, but it's pre-health. We're going to get mRNA into everyone. You get $500 billion to do this. Go to work, have fun. We're going to tell you that you're going to get cancer in the future. So have fun with that. And the new AI doctor that's going to be telling you what vax is going into your body next. So no one has anything to worry about if you thought that the right wing, the extreme right wing, was overhauling anything. They're not. We're stuck right in the same spot we were before, the powerful against the people, and we're still at each other's throats thinking that there's only one extreme way to do something and another extreme way to do something, when we should be aligned together and fighting them all united.
Yeah. And, it's kind of interesting, too, as well, the whole testing mechanism. Lila, you talked about, we have to talk about testing one show. Kerry Mullis, who invented the, what was it called? The testing system, that we used
the PCR.
PCR. Kerry Mullis invented it. He said it's not a diagnostic test. It's being used in the wrong way. Fauci doesn't know what he's talking about. He accidentally suicided himself shortly after, and we never really got some answers. But that's very interesting. This is conversations for another time. I just want to finish up the show because I know a lot of us talk about Western medicine. And my positive thing to say is that the reason why I'm very interested in listening to Lila and Ron and some of the points they made, I do find them interesting because my own struggles last year. I had this chronic inflammation. I was in my bed for almost 6 months. And I got to tell you that I wouldn't have been able to get out of those beds sometimes if it wasn't for prednisone, which is a Western medicine that's been used. It would help me calm my inflammation. So I do think that, even though a lot of people like to bastardize Western medicine because it treats just the symptoms, not the actual problem itself, right? That's what Western medicine is mostly about. There is a need for it. And there's a need for talking about these things and understanding these things. I disagree with what Lila and Ron said today, but I do think it's a necessary form that we have to dive into and we have to put on the table. I don't believe, from what I've heard, from what I've looked at, that when it comes to children, that most children there's a better chance of winning the lottery than children do of dying of COVID. However, these other incidences that you had talked about that need to be looked at. So I do want to say that today, with you guys bringing your information to the table, and one of you two can go next for your closing statement, that Western medicine is necessary. It is part of the puzzle. It's not a one size fits all. I believe looking in Chinese medicine, functional medicine, talking about ivermectin and the other treatments, I think is important. But there is a place to talk about all these things together. And I thank Lila and Ron for coming on the show. One of you two, please make your closing statement, and then we'll go to Matt, and then the person who didn't go will go last.
Want to go, Ron?
Oh, you want me to go?
You
go ahead. I'll go. Yeah.
So I really appreciate that you had us on to have this discussion. I am not a scientist. I don't think any of us are scientists, but we all have been doing research, and I knew coming in that we weren't going to change each other's minds. But I am happy that you gave us a chance to say what the science that I have been following has been saying for years on your show. So thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks
you for coming on, Lila. Matt.
I'll just say this. I think we're all connected on one fundamental principle as lefties. I think we do hold pharma, big pharma accountable, and we are skeptical. And I just urge people who maybe are hearing stuff that Paz and I are saying for the first time, and maybe it's hard to process. We're seeing a lot of stuff. I know I talked really fast earlier. A lot of stuff that we've been looking at the entire way. We didn't just come up with this overnight. We've been looking at this from day one. I would just urge people to look at the numbers of the profit model in pharma right now. We talked a little about the overwhelming children problems right now. I agree with that, Lila. I agree that we have massive heart attacks. You're looking at just the blood clotting, myocarditis. You're looking at healthy athletes, young boys just dropping dead in the middle of their sporting activity. I mean, these are things that are happening. And the problem is we never had a safeguard in place. Safeguards are pharma's worst enemy. And we know this. There was no safeguards during COVID. So you understood those numbers that you keep talking about. Go back and look at those. Those numbers of deaths are not accurate. Those were not accurate on purpose. We need to go back and see that when you have COVID or died from COVID, those were combined together to make people afraid. So when we're looking at results right now, whether it's long COVID or from the COVID vaccine, we have to do our own research. We can't wait for the science to come back because they don't separate the two. If I'm not allowed to ask why a young boy dropped dead for no reason in the middle of his soccer practice, I'm not allowed to ask what his vax status is, then I know for a fact I don't have to be a scientist or a doctor. I just have to be a human being with common sense and critical thinking skills to say that's not the way we do things. If you're not going to look into that and look at those statistics of how many shots he got and why he dropped dead, we're not going to know what the long-term results, not only from long COVID, we're not going to know, certainly not going to know from the vax.
Matt, do you have anything nice to say to Lila and Ron for joining the show? The closing statement?
Maybe I should have closed with a circle back to what I started.
I know there's a lot we want to say. I got it.
I want to say that I appreciate that we all are starting from an honest place of leftism. Pasta and I, we've been in this realm with people that never were in our space, and we were talking to them about this, and they didn't start where we started. So it's been very lonely to be in this space for so many years, 5-6 years now. So I am. It's awesome to hear you guys start from an honest place. And I've heard stuff you've said. Again, challenging big pharma is a good thing that we do. Being open to hear where people's stories of their personal stories, and I appreciate all that. And your guys both showing empathy and sympathy to people that haven't had it so well. So that's good. That's a great place to start moving forward.
Yeah. I'm not a leftist, says somebody in the chat. Yeah, I think I'm more of a leftist than you. Ron, go ahead and, I'm part of the anti-imperialist left, right? Just because I don't go along with your culture war bullshit doesn't mean I'm not a leftist. But Ron, you're a leftist, and this is the closing statements, and I can't thank you enough for joining on. There's so many things I wanted to say today that I can't, so we have to do this again. But please, you have the last saying, my friend.
Well, I would love to do this again. This was, I think, very interesting and very constructive. And, it's important that we have these conversations and that we look into all of these things. So I think as far as y'all, I obviously I respect your, I respect your point of view and what you have to say. So I'll just kind of focus again on the things that I'm pretty certain that we do agree on. I think we all agree to be skeptical of big pharma, Matt, as you pointed out. I think that we all agree that, vaccine injuries are in fact real. I know that sometimes people try to deny that. And, I've always been outspoken about that I do think that is a wrong thing to do. And I do think that we all agree that these companies should be held liable when that happens. I think we all agree on that. We disagree on some of the particulars within that. We disagree on some of the conclusions as a result of that. One thing I will say generally to people, everyone loves to say, do your own research, do your own research. I encourage that, but actually do your own research. Doing your own research does not mean taking some YouTube video hook, line, and sinker. It does not mean putting all of your faith in a handful of doctors, most of whom have been disbarred. It does not mean selecting a paragraph that's highlighted, taking it out of context, and saying that that's the conclusion. It does not mean taking a bunch of outlier data and saying, oh, this is the only science and everything else is nonsense. That's not what doing your own research is. Doing your own research is waking up every morning and saying, could I be wrong? and looking at different things, looking at different analyses, wondering what the bias is, wondering what the agenda is. That's what I try to do to this. I follow doctors and scientists about COVID who have no agenda whatsoever. They are just trying to inform, and they're concerned about what's happening in the world. I can give anyone a list if they're interested. And Pasta, since we're buddies, I'll give this proposal to you. Every so often on WhatsApp, let's not do it every day or we'll just annoy the fuck out of each other. But every so often on WhatsApp, send me something.
Yeah.
I will read it with an open heart and an open mind, and I get to do the same to you. Now, the only rule is it has to, fall into the category that I mentioned. It can't be some YouTube video from some talking head that I don't watch ever. It can't be some, like just sort of highlighted paragraph thing. It has to be a peer-reviewed study or a peer-reviewed article or something that has something to dig into. And I'll do the same to you, buddy. And we'll keep it back and forth. And hopefully my Penguins beat your Islanders this year.
Well, the Pens and the Islanders play tonight in a big game, trying to get into the playoffs. And I will not send you. I've never been a big fan of Alex Jones, but I love doing his imitation.
You can't send him if it's an invitation. That's fine.
And I really think the most important thing is that we come back because there's so many things to say. So if you want to have a conversation with the homeless left guy, Alila Charles Lay, who's there with Pete Lila, who's there with Pete Hedseth and Ron Pacone, take my dick juice. Alex Jones, Infowars.com. He tries to sell penis juice. I mean, that's what the guy's trying to do. It's ridiculous. I'm not going to share any video with him for you guys. But guys, thank you so much for coming on. Let's continue this conversation. There's so many things I have to say. So let me know when you guys can do it again. We'll come back. We'll have these conversations. I think your last closing statement, Ron, we should play that and open up the next show talking about doing your own research and what research we found. We'll send each other stuff left and right. Lila, not Leela, if you can send me your information, maybe we can start a chat on WhatsApp, the four of us, and kind of get into it and then pick it up on the show. But thank you guys so much for coming on. I think there was a great start to this conversation. How do you guys feel so far? Lila, Ron, about the conversation?
Can I just say one real quick thing that I really want, because I know you have a lot of, like not COVID cautious camp folks in your audience. I just want to throw this PSA out there because I never got the opportunity to. You know that there's a ton of COVID cautious people that also can't stand Fauci. Like you all need to know that a lot of us can't stand the guy. Yeah. Like there's a lot of us. We don't like the guy. I just feel like that's an important PSA to get out there.
Yeah. Okay. Matt.
No, good of note. It's I have to say that when I realized that he was the same guy that was the villain in Dallas Buyers Club, this is the guy who put the AZT out there purposely to kill people with AIDS. We know that
he failed miserably on the absolutely.
So they were saying fire Fauci from the left, like LGBT was saying fire Fauci in 1985, and they left that out when he made his appearances on SNL and Brad Pitt doing, and everybody's cheering him on like he was Mr. King Science. So that's
another thing we agree on. I mean.
Blue coat,
he
red
is
coat.
Such a bad communicator. I mean, I think I said this to Pasta. He is the worst communicator I think I've ever seen in my freaking. If you ask that guy what he had for breakfast this morning, he would say, "What do the American people want me to have for breakfast?" Like he wouldn't answer the freaking question. And so yeah, it was very infuriating throughout.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. I think the bottom line for me is that the qualified immunity is still there. These are still in their emergency use authorization, meaning they can't be held accountable. We can't sue them. So at the end of the day, I can't see it warranted at all, any type of vaccine that is protected where they can't be held liable. Because why would they care about us if they didn't care about us before? And that's something interesting.
Here's a question for a future episode.
Sure.
What if, and maybe it's like developed outside of the United States, what if they come up with a nasal one that completely prevents transmission?
Once again, I think we're gonna have.
Would you be open to it?
It would need 5 to 10 years of testing. I'm not taking.
It would need a lot of testing. Yeah. Would you be open to it?
As long as the qualified immunity is pulled and they could be liable for their actions, then I'd be open to anything they had.
I'd be open to anything where the VP of Pfizer wasn't telling us in public that, of course, we didn't do testing for whether it was safe and effective. We had to follow the money and follow the speed of science. That was her quote. We had to go with the speed of science and get this out immediately. Of course, we didn't test for transmission and effectiveness. That's the big
what
thing.
if
I've got a
only-
solution that works with every single strain of this virus. Clean the air, ventilate, and wear a mask. And then don't even worry about the vaccines. Cheap
Risk versus
easy.
reward on masks are really bad. When you talked about Leanna Wen talking about putting those masks on their children, how it distorted their face, there's a whole conversation. You guys are bringing stuff at the very end when we're supposed to be nice
I
to
know.
each other.
Yeah,
And
what are we
you're-
doing?
What?
What are we doing?
Nice.
Come
Right?
on
You know,
now.
guys,
Come
the
on,
bell
you can't-
sounded, the whistle blew. You know,
All right. All right, you're right.
I got a screen
Let's come
screen
back.
on my
Let's do
submarine
this
too. Ready
again.
to go. I'm going down with the.
I thought this was a foreshadowing for. I was trying to help you, man. I was giving you like tune in next time for.
It's a
I was
preview.
giving you-
Preview
I
for
was
next
giving
time.
you a cliffhanger, man.
Yeah.
No
Always have
seatbelts,
my
no
back.
condoms,
Pasta.
no masks.
What if the
I
Safety
know you
first.
always have my back, especially when I wear my two-piece velour purple Puma outfit. You have my back then.
I was gonna say, what if this nasal vaccine of the future works, but only if you're not wearing a jogging suit? Would that would that?
No
you'd have-
way.
you
Off
couldn't do it
limits.
then.
If I can't wear my two-piece
You're
Puma
gonna have to
outfits,
get an exemption. You're
Done.
gonna have to
No
write
way.
it for you.
not doing it. But listen, if you guys agree to come back, because this was great, right? There was no mudslinging, and there's been some tension between our camps. I just really quickly, would you not agree, Lila, Ron? I know Matt, you probably would, because we've talked about this some more, that COVID-19 was one of the most divisive issues for the left out there. You know what I'm saying? There were a lot of people. People say, "Oh, Pasta, he's a libertarian," but I'm a leftist libertarian.
You're not going to like my response because I don't think it was a dividing issue on the left. I think people maybe have to change the definition of what the left is if they aren't looking to protect communities. I don't know what else to say, but that is it. To me, it's like that is a leftist ideal, is you help protect each other. So to me, yes, I mean, I understand. And obviously it was capitalized on, the surveillance state, all of that. I agree with everything you guys are saying. I don't think that there should be vaccine mandates, but I do think that the science shows that it still is a very serious disease and it's not a cold. So, I mean, if that is the division, then yes, I guess that is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well, I
don't
think
we were
it.
divided either, Pasta. I think we were kicked out of the left. They didn't want to have conversations. They said we were Trumpers. They said I was called a white nationalist. I'm telling you, this is crazy. I'm in Hollywood here. I was called all these names just for saying, hey, can we look at the trucker mandates in the streets? Like, oh no, those are all Nazi Trump voters. I'm like, they're Canadian. What are you talking about? How are they Trump? But like, you couldn't say anything or you weren't part of the club anymore. And that's why we do the Homeless Left show, for this exact reason. I don't think we were divided, Pasta. I think we were banished. So we're a small amount of us. That's why I appreciate being able to be in a space and talk to people that we started from the same place. We started from those principles that we want to get back to. So I appreciate the ones we agree on here. We can move forward from that.
Well, and I'll just point out real quick, just to kind of be fair here and go on that question. It definitely goes both ways here. I mean, still to this day, I will just tweet about whatever, and I will inevitably get the like, when's your next booster? Which isn't even accurate and doesn't make sense. I had to leave a concert once because I was wearing a mask in a crowded indoor space, and some guy kept talking loudly about how he wanted to shoot me because I had a mask on. So, the hostility goes from all directions.
We got to
and I
ignore
will
that
say-
hostility sometimes, Ron. I mean, there was somebody in this chat that I know, and Pasta's not a leftist. It's like, okay, here we go again. Fine, if you don't want to do it, but there's attacks for everybody on all sides.
We get called shit libs all the time from certain online portions
People,
as well.
I mean, if you want to go through the chat, I will back scroll. People have been calling me a maniac, a moron, the guilt trip. I'm like, come on. And by the way, the people who still take COVID seriously have been completely shunned by all of society. You guys are in the majority. Most of the whole country agrees with you guys, right? It's whether it's Republicans, Democrats, half of the left, liberals, nobody wears masks except for, like, I'm the only one. So I'm not a sheep. I'm actually I'm the only person in my own space that wears a mask. Like, Ron wears a mask, but he lives an hour away from me. I don't see anybody wearing a mask. So to call me a sheep and like brainwashed, to me, like I get nonstop harangues lobbed at me.
Yeah, I mean, with due respect, y'all, it's like our side of the street, mine and Lila's, we have doctors, scientists, and some of the left. Y'all have Republicans, Democrats, Biden, Trump, eugenicists. I mean, that's
we have
just-
plenty of
that's
doctors,
just the
Ron.
reality. That's
We
just
have
the
plenty
reality.
of doctors.
You have
We
some
have-
outliers.
You're in.
Plenty.
Yeah, we are the minority. Like we're the
Yeah.
ones who have been sectioned off for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
Well,
I
we're
think
doing-
the party, the Democratic Party, kicked people like us out for sure. And never considered having us there. Anyways, I think we were done with the Democratic Party anyways. But guys, this discussion can go on and on. It's almost the top of the hour.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you know,
we did something
let's
right though. We did something right.
Yeah.
If we have in the comments every one of us getting I've never seen that before. Everybody getting bashed all equally.
yes.
That means we're doing something right here.
That-
So,
that-
yes.
you're doing
cool.
something
I've never
right.
seen that before. It's a first.
Guys, let's run this back. Let me know when you can do this again.
Do it
let's
again.
let's do this again. This was a great discussion, guys. I want to thank everybody for joining in. Guys, if you want to help us out, we do have a Give Send Go, givesendgo.com/election integrity matters. Fiorello and I are going to get in boots on the ground. We're going to Peru, Nicaragua, Colombia, Brazil this year. We're going to cover those elections, talk to those people. A lot of socialists out there, Lila. You would love that going on these trips out there. We talked to a lot of socialistas out there. Thank you for joining on in. We'll see you guys next time. Truth Out for Ron Pacone, Lila Charles, Matt Weinglass, Craig Pasta Jardula, Jayme CheeseSlice on the ones and twos. We'll see you next time, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.